Hi, I'm Katie Landon with the Los Angeles Times. With the World Cup a week away, we have our Brazil correspondent Vincent Bevins joining us via Skype today to discuss mounting protests in the country ahead of the tournament. Vincent, welcome. How are you?
Good, Katie. How are you?
Doing well. So I understand you're talking to us from the capital today, Brasilia.
Yes.
Obviously, it's a very exciting time there in that city and all across Brazil, but there's tension around the World Cup. Can you tell us a little bit of background behind that?
Right. Well, there's tension for two reasons. One, because the games start next Thursday, and two, because we're not quite sure how everything's going to go. With just 8 days in, there's still protests across the country, with one group promising to put about 20,000 people on the streets today. And some of the stadiums may not actually be finished. I attended a game on Sunday at the stadium, which will host the opener, and it's not done. So there's not only excitement for the soccer, but there's a bit of tension as to how everything is going to go and how Brazil is going to look in its moment in the sun. Just by way of background, in 2003, Brazil elected its first left of center president since the fall of the dictatorship. And since in the first 10 years after that, Brazil brought tens of millions of people, sorry, out of poverty and emerged onto the world stage. And the World Cup was seen as an opportunity to present this new Brazil to the world. But it's not going entirely according to plan. It seems the government promised more than it could deliver. And that's generated quite a bit of social unrest here, as well as some judgment abroad of how the country has been putting on the game.
Okay. So how widespread have these protests been so far?
Um, they're a minority, but they're everywhere. So in June of 2013, we had the largest protest movement in Brazil since the fall of the dictatorship, and that was based around transportation issues. There was infrastructure is quite bad in Brazil, and one of the main things that the World Cup was supposed to resolve was infrastructure issues. Back then, we had 1 million people on the streets in one day. Now, what we've had over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Was
There you
very
go.
hard to get
Yeah.
around. Yeah, hello?
Sorry, we lost your connection for a second. Could you repeat the last sentence, please?
Sure. So there's only been thousands in the streets this year, but they've been out in such force that they've been able to make a real impact on the cities. Yesterday in Sao Paulo, where I live, it was really tough to get around. There was a huge group of teachers striking. Police have gone on strike, which has led to a number of tragic deaths in the northeastern city of Recife. So it's unclear how big these protests will get. It's unlikely they'll get as big as last year, but they could make real impact on how the games go.
What kind of things are they calling for?
Well, there's three distinct groups. There's one group which is generally opposed to the World Cup, and the general source of discontent with the World Cup is that too much money was spent on the stadiums. It was not supposed to be taxpayer money, but it turned out being taxpayer money. And when the country still has very serious issues revolving around healthcare, education, and infrastructure. So there's one small group of students that have declared that they're going to stop the World Cup from happening. They probably won't succeed, but they sort of have a broad set of demands. Another group is the homeless workers movement, which is a set of thousands of poor families which have occupied a piece of land near the opening stadium and have demanded low-income housing for them and their families. And then the third group is workers who are striking using this period before the World Cup, when the government is in quite a weak negotiating position, to demand higher wages and better work conditions.
I see. So what kind of ways are they demonstrating? I understand that there was a mural of a child at a dinner table with a soccer ball in front of him that really went viral on social media. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, in addition to street actions, shutting down streets, lighting things on fire, this mural by artist Paulo from Sao Paulo, who is a street artist, really went viral, not only in Brazil, but around the world, because it sort of simplified a lot of the issues around the World Cup. What it shows is a young black boy sitting down for dinner, but instead of being presented with food, he's presented with a soccer ball. And this really, it's a simplification of what's happening, because we don't have starving children exactly in Brazil, but it's a simplification of the widespread complaint that if you're going to spend so much money on these fancy stadiums for the gringos to come, It's going to cost me so much money of my out of my taxes. Why can't we have better schools? Why can't we have better healthcare? Why can't we resolve our traffic issues? And he's sort of become emblematic of this battle that we've been having in Brazil over the last year, if not 5 years, to how Brazil is going to represent itself to the world. Is it going to represent itself as a new, modern, rich country? Is it going to rely on the stereotypes of samba and soccer, or is it going to try to represent a more complex social situation?
I see. Well, Vincent, I know you can't reveal who you're rooting for in the World Cup, but does the team have an A in it?
Does the team have an A in it?
Yes.
Uh, yes. Well, I like Brazil. I also confess I like Mexico because I grew up often watching the World Cup in Mexico. But for me, I like any team from the Western Hemisphere. So Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, United States. Go Americas.
Very good. Well, Vincent, we'll stay plugged in with your coverage over the next month or so, and we appreciate you joining us today. Again, I'm Katie Lannon with the Los Angeles Times.
Thanks, Katie.